Test, test, test. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I've got Carlos, K9OL, who's going to be talking to us today about this cool SDR gadget. He was reviewing it online. I thought, hey, that looks pretty interesting. And uh, he decided that, yep, I'll talk to you about it. So, Carlos, thanks for your patience. Sorry about that bad Zoom link. He was trying to get into the room and he's sitting there waiting, wondering where we were. But we got it figured out. So without further ado, Carlos, you're up. How you doing?
Doing all right. How are you, Rob?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
So,
I don't know if I preempted that, everybody. You notice this parachute? Because this is my other brother of another state for Parachute Mobile. He's Parachute Illinois. I'm Parachute Mobile, California. So this is how I know Carlos as well. But anyway, take it away, Carlos.
so I don't know what you're seeing my parachute. You're not seeing my presentation then.
Yeah, I
All
see
right.
just your parachute.
All right. Let me see if I can just share the presentation and we'll ditch OBS. And then, so I don't know. Let me go back to Zoom. Oh, Zoom. Come here, Zoom. Let me switch to this camera. Let's see if that helps.
There
So
we go.
maybe you
We got.
see my face now, and you
Yeah, we got you.
see my presentation.
Yep, we got it.
Outstanding. Well, good evening, everybody. I won't be able to see you the way I had originally planned, so please bear with me. I'm gonna have to shift around my style here. Oh, come on, where's my cursor? Doesn't matter. Uh, so Rob saw me playing with my Hermes light, and he asked me to make a presentation about it because some of you might be interested in this kind of stuff. I decided to go a slightly different route. Bear with me. If you have questions about it, save them up. I'll gladly answer whatever questions I'm actually able to answer at the end. And here we go. So, what I'm talking about is the software defined radio. And one of the things I was going to do is going to ask you all, to show me your hands if you know what an SDR is. But I can't see you all, so that kind of interaction kind of goes out the window. But I believe that an SDR belongs in your shack. And with any luck, at the end of this presentation, you'll think, you know what, an SDR does belong in my shack. And you will get one, and then you will have similar experience to what I'm having. I'm Carlos K9OL. I'm also D36519. Like Rob said, I'm a skydiver. I do parachute mobile in the Midwest. If you're coming to Hamvention, I'll be doing parachute mobile there, weather permitting. Get your QSO on. Uh, so I always start my presentations up front. Simple. Bottom line up front. We're gonna define it. Then we're gonna why use one. Then I'm gonna show you some examples for receiving. Then I'm gonna show you some examples for transmitting, and I'm gonna let you know some of the limitations of an SDR. Okay. My hope is to make this short so that you're not bored out of your mind in tears with this content. All right. If you have questions, my email address in the Z is good. So you're always welcome to drop me an email. I'll do my best to answer your questions if they're not asked and answered here tonight. What's an SDR? Broad strokes. An SDR has no dedicated hardware or circuitry specific to radio. And I say that in very broad strokes. Of course, we have to have some kind of an RF detecting system and some way to turn that RF detecting circuit into an analog signal that we can hear. But it's not what we're used to on a radio, on your typical HF or VHF or UHF radio. So it expands the possibilities by allowing us to not be constrained within, very specific bandpass filters or very specific circuitry that is designed to listen to, a you know brackets range of frequency. In addition to that, in an SDR, the heavy lifting is being done by a computer. In other words, the listening portion of an SDR is exceedingly wide banded. So wide banded, in fact, that there are SDRs out there that'll go DC to daylight. And most radios that are DC to daylight are very prohibitively expensive, at least for people like me. I don't know about you, but I don't have a few $1,000s, sitting in the shoebox next to my bed going, you know what? I need to burn this today. So an SDR fills in that need without having to burn an awful lot of cash. Um, SDRs can be FPGA, so field programmable grid arrays, or a SoC, or a system on a chip, and they're th- they're that way because they interact with a computer, as noted above in the bullet number 2, and they are meant to be super broadbanded and allow the computer and the compute that's part of the computer, the computing power of the computer to do the real work of filtering content and modulating the signal for you, demodulating the signal for you, and letting you hear what's in the spectrum, right? And they're also very cost effective for that, right? So you can imagine that if a radio manufacturer has to go out and have machines that wind toroids and build circuits to do a specific band. Let's say, for the sake of argument, 10 meters is super broad in the US. You have to create a lot of circuitry to be able to listen to that, let alone transmit in it. When you offload that hard work onto silicone, you have the capacity to get all that work done without having to do all the hard work in actual hardware, right? So broad strokes, an SDR doesn't really have dedicated hardware circuitry. The computer does the work. Most of the time it's an FPGA or a SoC, and it's very cost effective. So why do you need one or a dozen of them? Understand that I have like 15 of these things in my shack right now, and I realize that my specific implementation of this stuff is unique because I'm a nerd and I love doing this kind of stuff. But at the very least, you should have one. And why? Well, let's face it, we're amateurs. We like to play with toys. We like to experiment, and toys are nice. They give us the ability to experiment. And this is the kind of experimentation that doesn't cost us an awful lot of money. I'm talking about $35, $40 for a receiver, right? And that receiver, very broadbanded, so we get to do a lot of things inside of that chunk of bandwidth. Uh, you know, RF projects are fun. If you are in any way, like me, ADSB, again, I was going to ask the room, who knows what ADSB is, but I can't see your hands, so I'm just going to go with like half of you know what ADSB is, right? Maybe a third. ADSB is a way for you to track the airplanes that are flying above the airspace above you. Okay. Airplanes are required, commercial aircraft are required to broadcast their location as well as some extra data. And that was a mandate from the FAA that came after 9/11. They were having issues with how spotty the coverage of radar, ground-based radar is. So they passed a law, right? That fixes things, right? Uh, tongue in cheek, folks, tongue in cheek. That requires commercial aircraft to broadcast their location and some other data. If you want to know what aircraft are in your listening space, because we're amateurs, we know that RF only goes so far. Then you can set up an ADS-B station with an SDR, and you can see all of the aircraft that your antenna is able to listen to. And this also helps you learn about antenna placement, right? Because if you place your antenna behind the building, you're going to see that the coverage to the building side is not as good because the building is attenuating the signal. So it teaches you a bit about RF, right? Another thing you can do is APRS. As amateurs, some of us use APRS for, uh, excuse me, sending our location and messaging with an HT. And I use APRS a little bit different than some people. I use APRS to let my wife know where I'm at. So if I'm on a road trip, I have my APRS enabled. And yeah, anybody and everybody can see it, but the main goal is for my wife to be able to pull up a website and see where I'm at, right? Well, with an SDR, instead of having to dedicate a radio just to listen to APRS, you can set up an SDR to receive it. And if you want to, you can put that information up on aprs.fi for people that can't see the signal or can't hear the signal to see, right? To visualize. It's called an eye gate. Doesn't have to be a digipeater. You can just do a simple eye gate. Boom, there it is. And another easy project is an AMR, automatic meter reader. We live in 2025. I know, shocking. And uh, meters, gas, power, and water emit an RF signal on a regular basis with the information about their readings, right? So if you know the serial number of your gas, electric, and water meter, you can create an SDR. With an SDR, you can create a little computer with like a Raspberry Pi, which is what I use, to listen to that frequency and then keep track of your usage. Where this becomes handy. Perfect example I'll give you from my personal use this winter. I have an AMR. I set it up and it is listening to my gas and electric meter. And my electric usage went way out of spec from trends that I've established from having been, living here for 7 years. And it immediately triggered my brain to what's wrong with my house because my power usage is way out of spec. I found out that my heat pump broke and that my resistive heating elements were what was the system was using to heat up my house. I don't live in a big house, but it's still an expensive thing. I live in the Midwest. We're talking about the difference between a $300 power bill and a $900 power bill. I don't know about you, but that hurts. That difference hurts a lot. And my AMR SDR setup let me know ahead of time. I was able to contact the HVAC company and say, hey, this is broken. Come out and fix it. And they were able to get it fixed up. And I was able to set up a trend to see when they fixed it and how it fixed my power bill. So 3 easy, simple projects that we can use an SDR for that are practical to everyday life, I think, right? I don't know about you guys, but I'm a aeronautical geek. I'm a skydiver. I want to know where the airplane is at all the time. Uh, I use APRS and automatic meter reading comes in really handy. Another really, really cool use of an SDR. Your radio doesn't have a receive-only antenna port, right? Look, I know that there are radios that do this. Of course there are. But I don't have the kind of money to throw at a Flex or at a high-end ICOM or at a high-end Yaesu that has a dedicated receive-only port. So how does you know, uh, Carlos get all the benefits of a receive-only port without having one. Well, I have an SDR on the computer in my shack, and I have that SDR connected to a beverage on ground, right? And I use that as my receive antenna. And I have a pair of headphones that is set up to listen to what's receiving by the computer and not by what the radio's listening. Now I get it. The radio sensitivity, sensitivity is drastically better. But because my antennas are vertical, the amount of noise that I get is insane in comparison to that beverage antenna on the ground. So I would rather listen to the signal on the beverage on the ground than listen to the receive of the radio because the beverage on the ground is giving me a better signal in my ears. It's not as fatiguing when I'm sitting there for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and I'm still able to have the flexibility and the choice of having a receive only antenna. And uh then still use my radio as the transmitter, right? Instead of a receiver and transmitter, I'm just using the radio as a transmitter. The volume is off on it. I don't care. The noise is out of bounds. It doesn't matter. If I'm if I'm able to hear it on the beverage, I'm good to go. And then lastly, because we want a waterfall, right? Look, I get it. We waterfalls are a relatively new thing in the world of amateur radio, right? But they are nice. Are they needed? Absolutely not. We can spin the dial and listen for a signal, but they are super nice at being able to show us where the signal is at. And instead of spinning the dial from, let's say, 14,250 to 14,300, I see that the signal's at 14,300. I can just hop there right away. Done. Right? So those are super easy uses why you need one in your shack, or maybe a dozen of them. Maybe a dozen is a bit much, but I'm a little oddball. Here's an example of ADSB. This is my ADSB receiver, and you see all the airplanes that I had on the screen at the time I took the screenshot. You see that I'm seeing a total of 81 aircraft, 74 with position, and that I'm able to see how far they are from me and who they are, right? The nearest to me is N908 9 Charlie, and the type of airplane is a P28 Alpha, and it's at 7,400 feet MSL. Great, right? But I can also see that SkyWest is running a CRJ2 at 2,000 feet and descending, and that plane is heading to my local airport in Fort Wayne, Indiana, uh, and all the other stuff around it. I take a similar setup to this to the drop zone when I'm skydiving so that I can keep track of the jump airplane so that I have a better idea of what my real calls are as to what Manifest is telling me they are. Sometimes Manifest is accurate, sometimes Manifest is late, and sometimes Manifest is early. And as an instructor, I want to know this kind of stuff. I was an aviation geek long before I was a skydiver. This is the kind of stuff that just makes my heart happy, you know. I get to see this stuff. Another thing you can use instead of a DSB is you can listen to pilots with an SDR, right? So you tune into the airband, have it set up on your computer, you can just listen. It's like a scanner on steroids, if you will. So here's a screenshot of my AMR and my uh, gas meter for the last 7 days when I took the screenshot, which is a few days ago, and you see the progression. You can tell uh, that I had a cold night there or a cold day because you see the consumption happen spike up on at 8:55 in the morning on the 22nd of April. And it keeps going until 11:35 before it settles down. We had a cold front move in. That kind of stuff is handy for me because I know month to month ahead of time before the bill comes in. I know how much consumption I have for the month, so I can prepare my budget to account for the expense that's coming, right? And here's a screenshot of a dedicated waterfall and the receive only setup. I'm cheating here, right? I'm using the Hermes radio that Rob saw me using on a video as part of my receiving setup, and I'm using my 7300 to transmit. But in this, I'm able to see most of the band in one hit, right? So one screen, that's a 27-inch screen. I'm able to see most of the band, able to see where the signals are at, and then I'm also able to manipulate the sound with software. So I can, what you're seeing here is a 2900 hertz, excuse me, to the chunk of the spectrum, close to the 3000 that we normally use for sideband. So this is an upper sideband. I'm sorry, this is a lower sideband. This is in 40 meters. And I have a signal there, and I'm able to change and modify the notch on that to fit my needs, right? Not just this, the bandwidth, but also able to notch in the center. I'm not showing the notch here because I don't need it right now in this specific screenshot. But tomorrow, for example, is the Indiana QSO party. And I know that people are going to be tuning on the frequency that people are using. I can set up a 50 hertz notch dead smack in the center, and my ears are never going to hear people tuning, which makes me happy because I hate that sound, right? Uh, and I'm also able to set up the filter, the audio filter of that radio to hear what I want to hear. The bands in Indiana tomorrow are going to be super crowded, so maybe I don't want 2900 hertz. Maybe I only want 1K, right? If I'm able to catch your voice in 1K and compress it down to that, I can make the QSO and I don't have to hear all the extra chatter that happens on the sides, right? Because we know that everybody's going to be just slamming the airways. Uh, these are the kinds of things that you can do with an SDR that you can't generally do with your radio unless your radio has an SDR function in it, right? The modern radios, modern high-end radios are either SDRs uh, or hybrid SDR and super heterodyne, and you're going to be able to implement some of this, but the controls in it are not as easy or as nice as having a really nice big screen on your desktop and manipulating the signal the way you want. Here are some examples of some of the SDRs that I have. The new Elec NESDR Smart V5, I think that's the one, and then I have the RTL SDR. You can see that one's beat the beat the band, right? That's one of my older ones. The FlightAware, the new version of FlightAware looks a little bit different, but this is a FlightAware I bought back in 2016, right? These things connect to your computer over USB, uh, and you get all the functionality as a USB device. And then the one on the bottom is the ADSB Exchange Icarus Flight. This one specifically has a 1090 filter on it. So it has a 1.09 gigahertz filter built into the SDR because it's meant for listening to ADSB. They make another version that's orange that I also have, and it just happens to be uh, in use right now, so I couldn't take a picture of it. And the orange one doesn't have any filters whatsoever. So and then to the left of that, I have the AirSpy. The AirSpy is a little bit more expensive. The ones on the right, that column, are all in the $40 range. The AirSpy, I want to say, is $80. Can't remember what I paid for it. It's in that neighborhood. You can, Google it and figure it out. Uh, but the ones on the right are at 8-bit SDRs. The AirSpy is a 10-bit SDR, and yes, 2 bits of difference makes a huge difference. It has a little bit more spectrum available to it, and it's able to decimate the signal better. So we're able to get better, tighter signals out of the AirSpy, and you're going to pay for that because, well, it's a little bit better hardware, right? Um, In terms of transmitting, my Hermes Light is the one absolute SDR that I have. I also have an IC7300 that is also an SDR, but it is limited to the constraints that ICOM built into that radio, right? A second, let me take a drink of water. The Hermes is a transceiver that is QRP, 5 watts. But the beauty of QRP is that we can always throw an amp on it and get to 100 watts if we want, or 50 watts if we want, uh, and still get operating at a reasonable expense. I bought the Hermes as a means to find out if I really want to buy a Flex, right? The Hermes is an easy way, inexpensive way to use an SDR and decide whether this is what I want to go and do before I spend a boatload of money on a Flex, right? And right now, for me, it's looking like, yeah, I probably want a Flex. The question is affording it, but that's a different story for a different day. The Hermes is open sourced, available to anybody and everybody. You can make your own, right? Or you can just buy it from the group buys. Um, a lot of the expenses absorbed by the idea of, hey, there's 100 people that want one apiece. Let's all, let's throw our money together, and instead of buying one and paying, call it $600 for the PCB finished, let's pay $200 for the PCB finished because we went and did a volume buy. Um, so it connects to your network. Obviously, that means you have to have a network, you have to plug it in, so on and so forth. But the beauty of it is that I can pull up this radio right now on my laptop while I'm in my house, and the radio is in my garage. So I can play radio while I'm sitting in the office, in my home office. My boss thinks I'm working all the time. In reality, I have the radio pulled up and I'm working maybe a half the time. Don't tell my boss. Okay. Uh, Other samples of SDRs are the Flex Radio, the ICOM 7300, and the Apache Labs. Apache Labs makes a number of radios that are similar to Flex. Same vein of what you're getting in terms of an SDR. Obviously, quality differences and building manufacturing differences are. I'm not getting into that. That's not my bailiwick, and I don't have either one of those, so I can't speak intelligently about either one of those. But understand that they're in the same ballpark in terms of competing for your dollars. Uh, there are limits. I mean, it's $40, right? What did you expect? The cheaper SDRs are limited in the frequency they cover. I have a little screenshot there that you see. My Hermes light covers from daylight, from DC to 38 megahertz, so no 6 meters on it. And then the USB RTL dongle, excuse me, that I have connected to the computer for listening covers 50 to 2 gigahertz. And there's a difference there. The Hermes is a couple $100, and it's also a transmitter, so it's a transceiver. Um, and the RTL dongle is just a receiver. We're gonna have to pay, and there's limitations there, right? And if you're looking for a transceiver that does DC to daylight, SDR Play makes one. Also, I believe 5 watts. I haven't played with that one specifically, but I have friends that have, and they enjoy that one as well, very well. Um, and that's really it. That's the end of what I have for you today. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them. Bueller, Bueller.
We are here. That was a wonderful presentation. We will open the floor to questions. I know we have some. I heard somebody back there, and I think there's probably one on Zoom. Rob, you have the mic back there?
Test. There we go. Carlos, thank you so much. For what it's worth, the lights were off here, so if you tried to look at us, I'm not sure what you would see.
All I see is the gentleman up front in the by the lectern.
Okay, perfect. What we'll do is when we get questions, we'll zoom over there. So anybody in the room? Who's in the room? Oh, we'll start with Clark back here in the back.
Oh, so have you heard of the BitX line, the SBitX or the ZBitX?
I've heard of the BitX series. Also, another SDR. I have not had a chance to play with it. Everybody's raging about the ZBitX, and I'm hoping that I can snag one at Hemvention.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. It's a QRP radius. I think it's 150 bucks. It runs on a Raspberry Pi ZW2.
Yeah.
And the SBitX is a more full-blown one. It runs on a Raspberry Pi 3 or 4, I believe. It's more expensive, but it's much
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the XBitX at 4 days in May last year and the year before that, and it's on the list of things that I just like I want to, like I want to, but the XBitX, I want to say they wanted like 800 bucks for it, and I'm like, for 800 bucks I can buy a 100-watt radio.
about 450. About
Oh,
450.
okay.
It is. I think it's
So
a 20-watt radio. Oh,
cool. I'll have to look at it at I'll have to double check my expectations during 4 days in May this year.
All right. Anybody else? Soren's got a question here. Soren.
Hello. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Here in California, we have almost like a monopoly without going too much into it. It's called PG&E, and they are the ones giving us gas and electricity. And I heard, because I wanted to set up an SDR to listen to my meter, that actually doesn't work. Then you have to buy this adapter, this other thing, and you have to register. Have you heard stories from people in California trying to set these things up with like the likes of PG&E, or
I
with
have not, but the protocol for Itron so the protocol was initially created by Itron for electric meters, and it was wide open. I also know that in the last 5 or 6 years, they have made a version available that's encrypted, so that nobody can listen to your meter saying, I just use a kilowatt hour. Uh, so if your meters are encrypted, I don't know of any legal way around listening to it. However, understand that I said any legal way. I I will let you browse the internet and learn how to decrypt what is a very easy 8-bit key.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else in the room?
One question.
Hang on a second, Andy. Oh, we'll get you in here.
Yeah, great presentation. Can you give me the lowest direct room to the high let's see. Can you give me how broad one of those SDRs, based on cost, the lowest to the highest range? I mean, is that unlimited, or is there a range? Can you give me an idea of what an SDR can do?
So on the screen you're going to see uh the your typical SDR is going to be that RTL dongle that you see denoted on the call out, and that's 50 to 2000 megahertz. The cheap, inexpensive USB type, that like the ones that I have on this slide, are going to be in that ballpark. The AirSpy will actually cover the ham bands as well, also more expensive, right? But the ones on the right-hand side uh, are your typical Raphael chipset that are going to cover 50 to 2000 megahertz.
How wide? You're talking about how the spectrum wide?
Okay. How much spectrum? Um, the the RTL dongles, I believe, are like 16 kilohertz or 16 megahertz. And then the Hermes actually does the entire spectrum, right? The um AirSpy, I want to say, does 48 megahertz, but I don't quote me on that. Those are specs that are going to be specific to the AirSpy versus The ones on the right-hand side are all based on what's called the Raphael chip. And the AirSpy uses a different chip that has more decimation, more bits available to it. So it has more bandwidth available to look at. The Hermes, on the other hand, listens the entire spectrum. They like to, like, it'll listen from 0 to 38 megahertz all at once. It's a, it's an, it's an insane amount of data that it pumps through the network. When I'm listening to that and I tell it to, you know, I want to I want to see this much bandwidth, it floods the network. So you can absolutely flood how much spectrum you listen to. There are people that buy the Hermes to record, just like digitally record everything in the ham bands for the sake of having an archive. Trying to think of his name. Um, he is in the Ham Radio Workbench podcast. Thomas, I think is Thomas. I'm pretty sure that he uses a Hermes to record massively wide chunks of the spectrum, and then he's uploading them to archive.org for historical kind of things.
Very cool. Megabytes? Oh, is there a gigabytes, terabytes kind of aspect to that per second?
I haven't gotten to that deep into it. I can tell you that I have my Hermes on a 100 megabit link, and when I tell it to listen to the whole spectrum, it's 100 meg. Well, it's 97 meg and it's dropping packets.
Question,
Hang on a second, Andy. Carlos, I think HRO still sells the SDR Play. I think that was the Play.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, familiar with that. It was just another option that that maybe people have seen and have stories about it. I have one. Okay, hang on a second. I think Andy's been waiting. Let me get Andy, and then I'll come over to you. Andy, go ahead.
yeah, I got my first RTL something, blah, 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 about 20 years ago, and it was only $20. So, and I think it went down to 25 megahertz and up to 1.7 gigs. Can you still get those that cheap?
I really don't know. The cheapest one I've gotten recently was $27, and it was the orange version of the ADSB Exchange receiver. And that one doesn't have any filters. And I want to say it was $27 about 2 years ago. It may have changed since, but given the inflation and the that seems like a reasonable number of dollars to spend, at least to me, for a receiver that I can listen to quite a bit. But I do know that the Raphael chip is 50 to 2 gigahertz.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, we got another question over here.
Yeah, actually, more of a comment for some clarity on one of the previous questions. I don't know for the others because the only one I own is the RTL SDR V4, but I do know for that one that it records 3.2 megasamples per second. So at 8 bits, that would be about 25 megabits per second, about 3 megabytes a second.
There you go. I love it. Someone with the answer. Thank you.
Okay, we got Justin over here.
I was going to answer the same question for the Hermes at 38 megahertz wide. You need 2 samples for every cycle. So 38 times 2, and it's a 14 bits or 12 bit. I don't remember. I did the math at 14 bits. So just under 110 megabytes per second, 870 megabits per second.
There's a lot of gigabits going on here. One more
That's a
question.
beautiful. I mean, I love the fact that I have people in the room that actually know a hell of a lot more about this than I do. This is great.
Alexei, K06ZDC. So I have one of those dongles that you showed on one of the slides lying around in the house. And I also have a couple of really old Raspberry Pis. And honestly, I've been contemplating the same idea about sitting in the office and listening to whatever. The question is, do you know how much resources specifically that an ESDR requires from a Raspberry Pi to act as a server that I can connect to over Wi-Fi?
Not a whole lot. Obviously, Wi-Fi is going to limit how much bandwidth you're going to be able to listen to at any given point in time. But I could tell you that I can pull mine up right now. I have my primary ADSB station has two of those, and one is for ADSB, the other one is for air communications in the area, obviously, 2 meters airband, if you will. And I can listen to the local traffic and watch the ADSB traffic all at once, and it's fine on my Wi-Fi. So it's not it's and by the way, that's running on a Raspberry Pi 3, and the load on that Pi 3 is like 15% on average. So even a Pi 2 should be able to run, an ADSB receiver and an audio receiver without any issue. Your mileage will vary.
Ben, any questions come up on there? Hang on, let me give you the mic. Is that one not working?
We had one question in the chat. Can you use the RTL SDR to pick up the gas meter frequency? What software did you use to track/graph the usage?
So here, let me stop this screen share and hang on, let me pull up my so yes, can it listen to the gas meters? Yes. Let me connect to my AMR and I'll tell you what software I used because I built that a while back. So the software that I'm using is a distribution from GitHub called RTL_433. And I have that set up to listen to the beacons from my gas, power, and water. And then I wrote some software to graph it. So that software will listen, and it just listens. So I have that software set up to log to a JSON file. Then I take that JSON file and feed it every 5 minutes to a MySQL database. And then I have software or a Python PHP page that I wrote to then take the data from the MySQL database and graph it out for me. And if anybody actually is interested in that, I'll dump my source files and make them available. But it's not terribly difficult to do because this dummy did it, right?
All right. Any other last questions, Zoomer in the room?
There we go. I think I fixed this microphone.
Okay.
All right. And as long as we're here, I kind of I guess kind of a question, kind of a comment. I appreciated your story about figuring out that you were using more electricity than you anticipated. A month or two ago, I had a similar problem, but with water. And it would have been nice had I had this thing set up to know that I had a leak. Sounds like you were out maybe $600 extra, or could have been out $600 extra for the electricity. But I'm telling you, if the leak is under your house, it can be a lot more costly than that.
I know. The drop zone I work at had a massive underwater leak, and the drop zone owner asked me how to keep track of the meter because he was trying to figure out what was going on. This happened a few years ago. And, keep in mind that I have had my AMR running since I moved here 7 years ago, and I had it running at my old house as well. And he didn't catch it in time. It was like a $9,000 water bill. And that hurts, man. That no matter how you skin it, that hurts.
Very good. Okay, I think that's it. Anybody else Zoom or here? Okay. Carlos, sorry for the delay get you in, but we got you that link, the right link right at the last minute. So sorry about that. And thank you so much for taking up the offer to talk about this. Very educational, and good luck on your next parachute jump. I'm hoping to be back out of the drop zone next week.
Same.
And I'll be up in
Same.
the air as well.
You know, uh,
Oh,
those of you that are Ted Lasso
Oh.
fans, skydive is life.
all right. It looks like Shree's got a quick question here. Shree, take it away.
A real quick question for you, Rob and Carlos. When are you going to do a QSO parachute mobile to parachute mobile?
Oh man, you're asking an impossible question. So
Yeah, Carlos, we talked about that, but the logistics are going to be really tough to.
exactly. The problem is putting Rob and I up at the same time at two different places, in places where we have zero control over the lift capacity, right? So, first of all, you have to understand that I don't know about Rob. I'm pretty sure that Rob is just a fun jumper, and I don't mean just, right. He is a fun jumper, right? I work in skydiving, which means that I am the drop zone's little, you know, expletive, and if I'm not doing instructing, then I'm not making money. So to schedule the time, A, is one thing, and to get the lift capacity at the same time is nearly impossible to schedule because his drop zone is going to leave. Let's say they leave the runway. Even if we're running the same exact airplane, which we're not, obviously. Um, let's say he leaves the runway at 11 o'clock in the morning. My drop zone may leave the runway at 11:07. And 7 minutes is all the difference it takes for us to never hear each other because by the time I'm in the air calling CQ, he's already in the pattern setting up to land. And I don't know about Rob's setup, but at 3,000 feet, I stop all work. I don't care. You know, King of England could be on the line, and I don't care. At 3,000 feet, I am done doing parachute mobile. It's just that simple. 3,000 feet to the ground belongs to me. It's about safety. It's about landing safely. It's about uh, not having any other distractions. So just 7 minutes of difference makes the difference between us being in the air at the same time and us not even remotely being close to each other in terms of being in the air. I think the only way this is really going to happen is if we're both at the same drop zone at the same time and we leave out of the same airplane at the same time, and then we're able to like make a QSO that's couple 200-300 feet apart. It's the only way I can think of this ever working because the lift capacity is the issue.
Yeah. Well, okay. The impossible things are the only things that are worth doing. So here's one way maybe you could do it. You send out an APRS CQ, and whenever Rob gets it and he does a jump next, which could be many days later, also it doesn't matter, sends back a reply on APRS, and that counts as a QSO.
There you go. I think one of these days we just have to fork out the bucks and just reserve a plane that we synchronize our watches and take off at the same time. But
boy, that'd be cool, man.
that'd be big bucks though. But anyway, Carlos, go ahead.
I'll be at Skydive Cincinnati for the Dayton Hamfest. So if you happen to be in the air that weekend, so by being at Skydive Cincinnati, it means that I'm not working, right? Because my home drop zone is Chicagoland Skydiving Center, and Skydive Cincinnati is not going to say, "Hey, we need you for a tandem." So if you're in the air on the weekend of Hamvention, we might actually be able to make a QSO parachute to parachute.
That would be so cool. All righty. Thank you, Carlos, so much. And blue skies, as they say, huh?
Blue sky, sir.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Another Zoom question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Carlos, do you have a bunch of you guys doing it sometimes the way Rob has two, at least one or two others jumping with him who are hams?
No, unfortunately, at my home drop zone, I am the only amateur, and I don't have a ground station setting up as a net control. I have had the fortune, and I cannot stress the fortune aspect of this, that I've had a number of people that when I post that I'm making a jump in X number of minutes, after I verify that a frequency is clear, they will sit on that frequency and have a rag chew back and forth holding the frequency for me, and that's as close as I can get to a net control. And those people are amazing. Typically, it is Daniel VA3SDO out of Canada, Hammer You Dude out of Whiskey 9 Fox out of Chicago, uh, Steve Anderjack, KO4AFL out of South Carolina, um, Chuck, KK6USY out of California, and Jim. Jim has a new call and I don't have it memorized. But those folks very frequently will see that I posted that I'm about to go do parachute mobile, and they will sit on the frequency, and as soon as I get on the air and say CQ, they clear it. So they hold the frequency for me, and it's amazing and it's beautiful. And you know, they're not in this room, so but I tell you that I thank them every time from the bottom of my heart, because there have been times when they haven't been around to do that, and a frequency that I find open before taking off, I mean, um, I'll get up in the sky and it's either been in use because radio propagation, I couldn't hear it on the SDRs on the ground. Here, there's another use for SDRs. Or it became in use from the moment I took off to the moment I got out of the airplane. Prime example of that is one of the last few jumps that I made last year. It might have been the last jump that I made last year. There was a Japanese station just ripping the airways with, whatever their power limit is, having, just doing contesting on the same frequency I intended to use. And I had to just basically, wait for a break in his action and say, anyone waiting for parachute mobiles, shift over to this frequency and hope for the best. So it is really, really nice when a setup like the one that Rob has is very nice, because you're able to get up in the sky and know that the frequency is in fact yours.
Both. All right. We got to move on, Carlos, but thank you so much.
All right, gang.
Thanks, Carlos.
7-3, everybody. Blue skies.